I'm Lyn Rice.
And I'm Astrid Lipka.
And we're here to present the Sheila C. Johnson Design Center, a project we recently completed down at the new school, especially as it relates to issues of liminality at the urban scale, but also at the scale of the building complex itself and at the scale of the detailed interventions.
The Johnson Center combines these four existing buildings at street level to create a campus for Parsons, the new school for design. The 32 square foot sequence of liminal spaces draws together the school and its context in Greenwich Village, New York. Urbanistically, the center's main primary function is as a threshold through which all students and faculty are drawn up from the street into the classrooms.
Parsons was in a kind of strange situation. They're a very vibrant and large creative institution in a very large and vibrant city, but somehow they were disconnected from it. So a good part of our energy went into reconnecting the school and the city and using architecture as the interface to do that, to elongate, to enlarge, to enhance the liminal condition around the school, that is the threshold between the street and the school itself.
Here's a plan diagram of the four-building complex with 13th Street running along here along the top and 5th Avenue along the right side. Previously, the entire center was totally enclosed, and we worked to open up the perimeter and create a new glass facade or new transparent facade. As you can see, monumental sills that were almost at shoulder height closed off the building from the street. So we removed these stone barriers and were able to lower the sills to create an continuity between the inside and outside.
These large pane windows we shingled in plan at the corner, rotated them slightly toward the intersection. The threshold condition or liminal condition is not just that physical point that you transition from one space to another, but actually maybe the psychological effect at the beginning, right where that psychological effect is started. So we wanted to initiate that liminal effect out in 5th Avenue, and so rotated those windows to acknowledge it.
One of the main goals for the project was to create a new identity for Parsons. But for design school with such diverse academic programs like at Parsons, the issue of identity is very complex. We resisted the impulse to apply a facade and rather, or to apply a facade event, and rather opted to open up the spaces to increase the visual depth into the space, and so the identity is rather revealed than imposed.
Here, these sections through those windows show that the depth of the windows are actually enough to create an indoor-outdoor seat, so you can occupy that seat from either the indoor or the street side. It also acts as a thin exhibition zone along the school's perimeter for the display of student work. Previously, Henry would probably remember this shot, this is what I call the kind of absolute threshold. You're either outside or you're inside, and so we took that space and tried to create an occupiable perimeter so that there can be a seat on both inside and outside. This slide looks this way, but anyway. And also by extending the sidewalk visually into the space. So by creating an urban scale graphic that responds to the exterior, the sidewalk is essentially continued into the lobby space. We operated as designers, but also as planners, to set up opportunities for students to create an identity for the school through their own work. And this, what we call the pedagogical billboard, was set up for the installation of student work, and that's actually a fine arts student photograph there. These sliding monitors that track back and forth along the wall also display student work.
Monitors and billboards are retail techniques used to communicate to the street, and in this case, they're used to get the student walk out into the city. We read each of those existing elevator and stair cores with student graphics, and they are highly visible to the street. These elevator and stair cores were previously hidden from view, and now this is the exact same location. Those cores are now opened up to the street, and in this case, a wall pivots out to create a critique zone in this area at 13th Street and 5th Avenue. It is really the student critique process is really the heart of the design education, and so we located it at the complex's most prominent corner at 5th Avenue and 13th Street.
Along with these urban scale issues, there's a whole set of internal, let's say, issues. This was a kind of rabbit warren of circulation between the four buildings, each with its own entry point. Lines of people out the door waiting for elevators. We did a careful analysis and came up with this highly sophisticated diagram locating the geographic center of the building complex, which was occupied by a maintenance shop and attendant trash alley. That looked something like this. And a couple of years ago, we had an exhibition of this project as we were designing it, and we created this inverted periscope that created a preview of what it would be like to tear open this space. We made an insertion here, a little periscope that looked across the shop and right in center to 13th Street. So as you look through that, you can see the layers of space that you're cutting through. It was a very surreal experience to see this, and hard to imagine that space, but yet it gave us hope that transitioning from separate buildings to a single circulation zone, one that operates between these buildings, was the right direction to go.
Another characteristic of threshold or liminality is as an intermediate state or in between. So in our case, we had the...
Oh, sorry.
We had those tall buildings around an empty center. And so we used this empty in-between space to create a new campus quad for the school. Classical campuses are master planned around quads, and the quads are transitional zones that have path and exchange on in between. Our campus is an urban campus, and our quad is an improvised quad, and it provides horizontal and vertical circulation.
So even though we took advantage of this kind of open center, there was still that pesky maintenance shop, but we took care of that. And also carved out a chiller plant underneath. So the important thing here is that we created a social surface that for the first time drew together the students and faculty of the different disciplines of Parsons so that they could socialize, exchange ideas under the same roof. And speaking of roofs, we covered that space with a 1,500 square foot glazed roof and created connections to all of the buildings from this location, including 66 Fifth Avenue. So importantly, internally then, we were able to connect Fifth Avenue to a new entry at 13th Street that you see here. This is a very similar view to that little periscope view now opened up. So this is the resultant plan. The quad in the center with the other programs spinning off of that, and the access ramp from 66 Fifth Avenue, the large gallery space, an archive space, auditorium, student galleries occupying this entire zone here, a future design store, an orientation center, and that student critique zone in the corner that Astrid described at 13th Street and 5th Avenue. The quad is intentionally not a place, it's a space, intentionally kept as an in-between space, and we had a lot of discussion about this, but this ramp really is oversized to take up half the space so that groups can pass back and forth. This is a transitional space, And it's really where 66 spills out into this space and 75th Avenue spills out into this space in equal doses. That concrete is a continuation of the sidewalk from the intersection of 13th and 5th Avenue and extends all the way into the back of the gallery. And then you can see the ramp poking up to connect to 66 Fifth Avenue internally with an aluminum floor there that continues on that slightly raised level.
So internal transitions are not only planometric, but also sectional. The project negotiated about 20 different existing levels within the area. Here we sampled the project and sliced different programmatic sections that show the sectional differences between those spaces that allow for various different transitional zones like ramps and stairs and overlooks and underpasses. Previous enclosed spaces like this trash alley were opened up even to the street outside, and existing, formerly existing maintenance closets were perfectly located to provide a future overview over the entire space. So it was these case-by-case opportunities that we identified within the space and worked to blend the spaces sectionally.
So moving kind of between the scale of the building complex and the scale of the architectural details, we realized that there was such a diverse range of programs within the center that there needed to be something building by building that would unify those things, and the answer was actually the building structure itself. So we stripped away 90 some odd years worth of accumulated finishes from the structure. These are 3 different sections through the 3 different buildings, or 4 different buildings. 75th Avenue and 2 West 13th was a concrete encased steel structure, a very low wood structure at 68 Fifth Avenue, and a vaulted structure at 66 Fifth Avenue. So our architectural insertions were treated as discrete elements within a newly raw existing structural shell. And we worked to negotiate between the new programs and that shell to create an identity for each space. So it's like a half shell relative to the raw shell, a liner relative to the raw shell, a box in a box relative to the raw shell. So in this case, that meeting pod that used to be the housekeeping closet, a suspended box within the raw shell that continues on past into, we would say, the territory of the gallery, although the gallery proper is located within this kind of box within a box. And then there's the facade here, and a gap left between that's a little bit ill-defined. We would say it's an expanded liminal zone where socialization can happen or other unplanned activities. The former facade closed up by some mechanical zones that we were able to get rid of, maintaining some down here, but essentially exposing almost a section cut through that gallery box.
And in the back of the gallery, we open up the ceiling just slightly to get a glimpse of the existing shell, raw shell behind, just a little tilt up. Just outside of that gallery is where the trash alley used to be. We cleaned that up, exposed the raw shell, and in the back here we have a new meeting room that is separated from the quad just by a transparent glass wall. Some programs required a little more architectural separation, like the auditorium. This is the previous auditorium that has a pretty unclear relationship to the existing building. So we again stripped away all the existing finishes and inserted this bamboo shell that leaves some exposed masonry and ceiling visible. At the orientation center, we also use bamboo, but here it's a tightly fitted liner that follows the existing contours of the space. At the Callan Archives, the top is exposed, and at the bottom we inserted this felt liner, a kind of half-shell felt liner that provides a quiet, scholarly space. the center of it is monitored by an office space that has views out that are negotiated through a digital drape that is applied onto the glass box.
So even on something as plain as glass, we tried where we could to negotiate transition rather than to have absolute transitions. Here at the glazed roof and the quad, also we were happy when we found out the beams needed to be this deep to span this distance, so that they allow views up and out to this kind of back of house New York landscape of fire escapes and water towers, but also are solid enough to keep a sense of interiority within the space. Mechanical systems along with structural systems were left exposed, in this case kind of corralled behind a veil of aluminum mesh. And we mounted this NASA-like countdown clock here to map another kind of threshold, that is the temporal space that leads up to the start of new school's 3-hour class cycle. So in closing, we would say that Parsons, or the Sheila Johnson Center, does operate urbanistically as a threshold to the school from the city, and vice versa. They've asked us actually to design this lobby across the street at 72 Fifth Avenue, which is now under construction. So we'll have some kind of new threshold or a dialogue across the street where we're doing a very similar thing, and that is essentially trying to engage the school deeper into the city.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.